millennials lost to Republicans for good? Millennials in politics? Is there any way to get them back? Joining us now, Danielle D'Souza, who, as you might guess, the daughter of Dinesh D'Souza and author of Why God? An intelligent discussion on the relevance of faith. Danielle, welcome. And because we love Dinesh, we love any offspring of Dinesh automatically. So you automatically have points of credibility here.
Oh, my gosh. Well, thank you so much. But
you are an accomplished author in your own right at a very tender young age. So congratulations on that. You know, millennials, I often think, what's the future of the Republican Party? Is it good or bad? When you look at millennials, they're trending left so rapidly that I can't help but think the Republican Party, my party, might have no future. And I'm worried about how to get them back. We used to have a young woman here. Her name was Jenkins Fox. She used to be a kind of contributor here when she was in high school. Then she went away to college. And I often ask her, Jenkins, why do you like Bernie Sanders? I says, is it green? Is it gay issues? Is it this? Is it that? And she said, no, millennials like him because of free college. Is that true? Is that basically what all this is about?
For some people it is. For a lot of young people, they're kind of like one-issue voters, and they don't know a lot about, what socialism really means. And I think that when they see anything that says free, like obviously they just run towards it. I have a good friend, and she took out so many student loans, but now she has to work for the government for 10 years just to get the loan forgiveness program. So I think the Democrats are really setting up this system where people just become dependent on the government.
So women, I guess young women in particular, graduating from college, it's a very hard situation. You imagine living in a city like Washington, you have your rent is $3,000 a month, and all of a sudden you have a student loan that's another $1,800 a month, and you're quickly in a lot of trouble. And I guess people like Sanders exploit that, and they come in and promise candy that they know they can't deliver. So it's almost like they're modern-day political drug pushers on kids, right? That's what it sounds like to me.
Yes, absolutely. I think that they create the problems that a lot of us face, and then they claim to have the solution to these problems. And then it just results in us being dependent on the government, not in us actually pulling ourselves out of the situation, having a better life, any of that. Those goals that we all have.
So beyond just the free college thing, for those millennials who might be attracted to something broader, let's talk about, a lot about socialism. Why are they so attracted to this craziness? I mean, what causes them? Okay, maybe I can understand why they like the Green New Deal. It sounds good. It sounds healthy in their minds, or whatever. It's wrapped up with global warming or some darn thing. That's fine. But why this all the way left thing? Do they enjoy paying taxes, particularly when they're broke? I mean, I just don't follow it. Help me out here.
Well, I think that the left really uses branding to make it seem like they're the party that helps people, and they kind of exploit this guilt that they create in everyone. So if you maybe you do have a good job out of college, maybe you are doing okay, you feel bad about it because other people don't. And then if you're one of the people that doesn't, then obviously you would love free things from the government too. So I think that really actually conservatives and the Republican Party, we're the party that helps people. We're the party that changes people's lives, not the Democrats, but the Democrats act like they do. And that really appeals to young people.
What scares me is this terrible sense of communalism that's developing at the expense of individualism. And young people, maybe much more broadly than just political or economic theory, they're being subsumed in this whole matter of a communal. We're all together. We're all tied together, and we all need to think about the society and not advancing ourselves. Of course, we know as conservatives that if you want to help the society, you advance yourself, you create jobs, you build, you grow, and when you advance yourself, you advance the world in most cases. But the left, of course, doesn't see life that way. I'll give you an example. I have some bad habits. One of my bad habits is I litter, and I'm a litter bug, and I just, I throw things on the ground. It gives me some small satisfaction because I have no children, so I don't benefit from schools. I pay high taxes, and I feel I get nothing for it. So when I litter on the ground, I derive satisfaction from the fact that Arlington County has to clean my litter. Okay, anyway, that's just my pet peeve. But okay, so I remember the other day, these two people, young kids, saw me litter something. They saw me litter the wrapper from a candy bar, and they went wild. And this young girl, about 25 years old, chased me down the street and picked it up and held it at me. I mean, it's this. Now, of course, we shouldn't litter, but what I took away from that was this really bad sense of communalism that's developing. and they're all becoming consumed with it. Does that frighten you like it frightens me?
Well, it's ironic because, in the situation you're mentioning, I don't think she's even, being a communal person, because if she were, she would pick it up herself. She wouldn't be pointing the finger at you.
That's a good point.
I think young people are so entitled. They're just virtue signalers on the left, basically, and they act like they're communal, but actually they're extremely selfish, and they do very little for the community in reality, but they want other people to do everything.
That's an interesting insight. That's an interesting insight. What's the quote from Margaret Thatcher? Socialism works until we run out of other people's money. Isn't that, what did she say? She said in Parliament before she left, I think it was in 1990, she said, I forget, but so much good stuff. Okay, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Beto. Let's talk about Beto. Now, is he the new Bobby Kennedy? I mean, I don't think he's any Bobby Kennedy, but are kids attracted to him the way they were to Bobby in 1968? Is that what you see there, or what do you see? What's going on with this guy?
Well, I know the left is trying so hard to draw parallels between Beto and the Kennedys. Honestly, I don't think the Kennedys are all they're cracked up to be. There's
of course, we know that, but I mean,
going on there, so,
the image.
There's obviously that, but I think that kind of just overall, Beto is really just propped up by the media. Like, he doesn't even actually have a lot of credibility. He really doesn't offer any kind of policy changes. All he really talks about is climate change. So I think young people just think that he's like cool in some way.
Isn't it, though? There's a paradox emerging as well, and that is that today's young people in a lot of ways are savvy. They're information oriented. They have access to way more information than my generation ever did 30 years ago. But yet at the same time, they're not really interested in facts. Like, for instance, with Beto. I mean, any smart kid graduating any decent college understands that we can't eliminate fossil fuels in 10 or 12 years or whatever he said. He said we can eliminate fossil fuels within the decade. Everybody knows that's not true. Anybody with a college degree, even if they're 22 years old, they know that's not true. It's almost like it's something they want to believe. It's in some sense, the same is true of Sanders, because most kids, if they have half a brain and, frankly, a 10th grade education, know that college is probably not ever going to be free. And they know this. It's just something they want to believe in. Is that it?
Exactly. I think if you were to ask most people what are fossil fuels, I don't think they even know what they are. I don't think most people even know about most of the science that they claim to be talking about. And honestly, I think that when you present them with any kind of facts that go against their narrative, they don't even want to listen to it. So it's not even really about the science behind it.
That's a good point. Let me ask you this. What can the GOP do? How do we get young kids back? We're facing all these terrible obstacles. They're attracted to green. They're attracted to gay rights. They're attracted to Bernie Sanders and free college and this, that, and the other. Global warming. What do we do to get them back to the Republican philosophy?
I think that the key to really getting them to our side is to focus on like hardcore conservatism. Honestly, I think that the moderate conservatives think that they can win in Democratic areas or try to convince young people to their side because they're moderate. But honestly, I think young people are convinced by people who have conviction and who actually say, like, no, this is how your life can be better. This is how, things can actually change. Because young people, like, they have that idealism. So I think it's actually adhering to real conservative principles.
But how do we reach out? I mean, but in a lot of ways, I mean, it's good to say that, and I hear you, but in a lot of ways, they very expressly have rejected the traditional Reagan conservatism, or even certainly the Trump brand of conservatism, even though it's a lot more populist than the Reagan brand. They're rejecting both. I mean, part of it is they don't like the Trump messenger, and I understand that for young people. But how do we relate to them? Do we need a Beto-type candidate of our own? What is it that we need? Like maybe Democrats have had that kind of candidate for a long time. I mean, Obama, in a sense, is that. Looking at Beto, I mean, even Howard Dean had his own appeal. But what do we need to do? Do we need different candidates?
Well, I do think that might be part of it, having candidates that kind of just have a personality that appeal to young people but adhere to conservative principles. I think that actually helps a lot. I think a lot of the time it really is just like a branding issue. And sometimes that can prevent people from hearing our ideas. But I think even focusing more so on people who are, not traditional Democrat voters. I think that, young people who are Democrats who are incredibly privileged. I mean, I don't think we can convince them, but certainly young people who don't have as much, who actually really need a better life. I think we should focus on those people.
On how we can offer them a better life without promising candy, without promising. We have to sensitize them to the realities of modern life.
Yes, and to say that, you know, you can feel pride in your work, you can have goals, and you can achieve those goals. Not to say, you know, you're just going to depend on the government, because in many ways it's actually not candy. It's like poison, because I know that when I feel like, you know, I'm in a situation like that where the government is basically just holding me by the back of my neck, it's like I feel like I'm choking. I feel like, oh my gosh, I don't even feel good about myself, because the government, I mean, yes, they give out a lot of stuff, but they also, people who are on welfare, like, they don't have great lives, you know. I think there's still a lot of despair there. And so I would much rather work hard and get somewhere on my own rather than be in that situation. Danielle
D'Souza, America First Millennial Advisor, author of Why God, an Intelligent Discussion on the Relevance of Faith. Danielle, thank you. Where can let's talk about where they can reach you. Where can folks reach you?
Oh, well, I am Danielle D'Souza Gill on all of my platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So you can just type in Danielle, even like DSOUZA, and you'll just find me.
Danielle, thank you so very much. Judge Jeanine Perro, do you think she should be suspended? I have no idea what she did wrong. Maybe Chris Salcedo can help us. Author, political analyst, you know him here. Host of the Chris Salcedo Show, AM 700 KSEX Houston and 820 AM WBAP in Dallas, as well as NewsMax TV. Chris, welcome.
Hey, Jack, great to be with you.
Great to have you. Well, you know, this Jeanine Perro thing, first of all, what she said sounds so oblique. I said to our producers here before this began, I said, my God, if I were on Fox, I think for some of the things I said, they might take me out and shoot me or hang me. Maybe you feel the same way. I don't even know what she did wrong. What is going on over there at Fox News?
Well, we know that there has been a shakeup. They've divested their studios. They're now in the hands of Disney, their theatrical studios, and now Fox News is a standalone all by itself, being independently traded. And the Murdoch sons, who are decidedly Democrats, very much left-leaning, are now taking over. I don't know why this intellectual exercise by Jeanine Perro was deemed offensive by Fox News. In Fox News' defense, they were able to come out and state on the record that they found her line of questioning to be unacceptable. And that's more than the Democrats have done with Ilhan Omar, who was the subject of Ms. Perro's intellectual discussion. And Ilhan Omar was able to conduct anti-Semitism multiple occasions and never called out by name by her caucus, never called out for her anti-Semitic tropes and a consistent anti-Israel, consistent.
Boy, that's for sure. That's for sure. Well, let me ask you this. It would seem to me that entities like Fox News or CNN, or really any of them, they have more leverage over advertisers than advertisers have over them. My feeling has always been that this is an excuse, as you suggest, with Lachlan Murdoch and the new gang to do what they want to do anyway. For instance, go back to O'Reilly 2 years ago. I guarantee you, Chris, had O'Reilly been 49 years old instead of 70 years old, Fox News would have closed ranks around him, they would have defended him, and they would have pushed the whole thing aside. I really think that this is an excuse to do what they want to do anyway. I don't know how old Perro is. Perro might be. She looks young and great and successful and all that, but she might be 70, somewhere around there. And maybe Fox News, maybe she's on her last contract anyway. Is Fox News just slyly using this stuff as an excuse to do what they want to do?
I don't want to pretend to know what goes on inside the hallways and the executive suites of Fox News. What their bottom line is, I understand what you're suggesting, that there's some ageism going on here. The big fat contracts, they're trying to get rid of them to better the balance sheet. I have no idea what's going on there. The only thing I took issue with was the fact that here is Jeanine Perro, who's positing the argument, okay, if Ilhan Omar is going to question the loyalty, the patriotism, even of some Democrats, of their support for an ally, Israel. And then that leads Omar to say, well, you have more loyalty to a foreign nation than you do to America. If that's permissible, then I don't see why Judge Jeanine positing this, well, why can't we judge Ilhan Omar on the same standards? I mean, you wear a hijab. Is it reasonable for Americans to conclude that you have more of a loyalty to that tenet of Sharia law than you do the U.S. Constitution?
I'm with you 100%. I don't even see the faintest whiff of even of anything even mildly offensive. I'm surprised it was even noticed. I mean, much less a suspension. I mean, if you take a look at this, what I've always thought with Islam, feminists, and this is a question that should have been asked of Hillary Clinton in a presidential debate, but wasn't. How can you possibly call yourself a feminist if you support and have reverence for and have respect for these rules in this religion that require women to cover their head and so degrade women? Shouldn't we all denounce such things? Isn't that, particularly for a liberal, monstrously incompatible with feminism?
It is, but they're never held to account, because this is one of the wonderful double standards that and what I call liberal privilege that the Democrats enjoy. And they have policy positions of theirs that are in direct conflict with other policy positions. But because they own the basket of biased press, they're never called out on any of this stuff. And it's the reason why Judge Jeanine gets the weight of the world brought down on her shoulders for what she said. And while Ilhan Omar can get out there and be anti-Semitic and a Jew hater all she wants, consequence-free.
Of course, and anti-Semitic all the way, and nobody cares. Nobody even mentions it, I guess, because she's on the left. So, okay, so this comes, it just seems to me this would be so easy. Go back to Fox again. It would have been so easy for Fox News to brush this off. Okay, so Media Matters and George Soros bring this up. I mean, they could have easily brushed this off by saying, "Oh, that's just another George Soros tactic. We're not going to have our First Amendment rights." And for that matter, why doesn't Fox start attacking Soros and start attacking Media Matters? They should fight back. I would fight back and start targeting their people and find all kinds of things out about their people. But they're not doing that. They're not doing the things they did 10 years ago and 20 years ago.
No, it's true. It's very true. And again, it's a whole shift. I mean, now I'm not suggesting the hiring of Donna Brazile and the alleged, because we still haven't confirmed this, the alleged suspension of Judge Jeanine over at Fox are at all related. But I mean, it is bad optics when you hire a woman who is a longtime Democrat operative who was known to have cheated in the last Democrat primary. You hire her on the very same week. You suspend Judge Jeanine Perro for positing a thoughtful examination of something that's truly unacceptable. And of course, we all know Judge Jeanine didn't think for 1 second that wearing a hijab makes you loyal to Sharia law over the Constitution. It was an intellectual exercise using an absurd question to demonstrate absurdity, which is what the Democrat Party has been partaking in. It's a time-honored tradition in an America pre-liberal privilege.
Although, let me get real controversial here. I wonder if an adherent to Sharia law, is it possible to still consider yourself bound by the Constitution? Maybe Sharia law doesn't really allow that. I mean, when we start looking at Sharia law, maybe there are deeper questions here.
Well, that's a separate issue. I believe what you just said is absolutely true, that Sharia law is incompatible with the U.S. Constitution. And that's not what I believe the judge was doing. The judge was fully knowledgeable that simply wearing a burqa doesn't make you an adherent to Sharia law over the Constitution.
Sure.
So some other things may contribute to that. It has not been established that Ilhan Omar is devout to Sharia law. We don't know that yet. But again, Judge Jeanine was saying that it's unacceptable to question Americans' patriotism because they support an ally. It's every bit as absurd as saying that because you wear a hijab, you don't support the Constitution. And that's what she was trying to do. And I'm sorry, it was an intellectual argument that apparently some folks didn't get.
I wonder, going back to the Murdoch sons now, as you suggest, taking over, I wonder what the business plan for them is. Because if you look at Fox News, okay, so what do they want to do? They want to become CNN. If they become CNN, they're going to start to push away their conservative audience. there's no business case for becoming an entity in the center. You've already got CNN, which is, well, center left, but left, and MSNBC way out there. Why would you want to chase them? Then what do you'll essentially leave, and maybe that's good. That's good for people like you at Newsmax. But maybe then you leave the conservative audience to the smaller channels, which won't be smaller much longer. They'll grow. But that doesn't seem like a smart business move if you're Lachlan Murdoch, right?
Not to me. Again, the reason why Fox has enjoyed such rating success is they have been the lone bastion for balanced news on cable. And this move by the Murdoch sons to in their view, I'm sure they view it as mainstreaming, which is accepting liberal premises as news, which what CNN and MSNBS have done already. And you can see CNN, as a matter of fact, I just posted this on the Salcedo Show Facebook page. CNN just enjoyed a double-digit ratings loss just last week. And many are crediting that to their anti-Trump, anti-GOP stance, that channel just can't get out of their own way and actually do something called reporting and journalism. They just can't do it because by virtue of the fact who runs that joint. So if the Murdoch sons are looking at that as a recipe for success, I'm sorry, I think you said it right. I mean, social media is blowing up about One America News, about Newsmax, how fairly soon they will become juggernauts as more and more people say, yeah, you know what, Fox isn't what it used to be, and they'll vote with their remotes.
Chris, a couple of minutes remaining. Let me ask you just the mechanics of this. Okay, so you have Media Matters and you have Soros. They begin attacking. How do you think the mechanics of this work? Do they go in and pressure certain advertisers themselves? How organic is this? Do they pressure the advertisers to drop it? How does the strategy work on their end? What do you think?
None of it is organic. It's all generated. It's tantamount to the bot creations of the left on social media. Social media helps in this effort. It's every bit as vacuous as the liberal collectivist ideology that is dominating the Democrat Party right now. None of it is real. It's the equivalent of saying there is no emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border with all that illegal activity. There is nothing organic or real about this. And that's why I am shocked that so many otherwise intelligent people are succumbing to this effort. It's all organized. It's all targeted. And I believe if Fox News is looking at this and saying, well, we have to insulate ourselves from these attacks, I've got news for you. You're not going to do that. All you're going to do, the attacks will continue until you are just like MSNBC and just like CNN carrying the Democrats' water. I
really think the time has come to fight back by looking into the people who run Media Matters, and we've got to start doing investigative reporting on the conservative side. You know, the reality is the liberals have become better with tactics. We used to have the lead in tactics, but we don't anymore.
Right.
And I think we need to improve. Chris Salcedo, thank you so much. Author, political analyst, host of the Chris Salcedo Show in Houston and Dallas, and of course on Newsmax TV. And Chris, where can they find you online?
ChrisSalcedo.com, ChrisSalcedo.com, and all the links are right there. Jack, it was great meeting you.
Chris, thank you so much. A pleasure. Pleasure is ours. Joining us now, Bernadette Cattaneo, one of the leading people in the country on substance abuse and treatment. She's CEO of the Lakes Treatment Center and is becoming a very big player in national health policy in the treatment space. Bernadette, thanks for taking time.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Well, you know, normally we talk to you about just substance abuse and treatment and all the innovative things you're doing in that space. But I want to ask you, I know the Lakes Treatment Center you've been the victim of some terrible behavior by a larger company. And I suspect there are many more like you. And this is emerging as just a terrible problem, not just in California, but all over the country. Can you tell us in your own words just what all this is about?
The issue really is, what we here are doing as treatment providers for substance abuse and mental health is, we're on the front lines. It's a war on drugs in this crisis that's going on. And we as the providers that are giving treatment are on the front line doing the battlefield. And what's becoming very apparent is that the war is not just us helping to treat these individuals, but the battlefield is switching to the insurance companies fighting us. And what they're doing is they're singling out mental health issues, substance abuse, and they're just denying treatment services across the board. And they're doing it very slyly by setting up a set of standards and criteria, medical necessity criteria that are unobtainable. Absolutely 100% unobtainable.
With that as prelude, that's a great background. Tell us now, but we're having terrible problems with this one large company. Let's go into that. What's happening? Tell us what's occurring.
Well, the company that we're speaking about is United Healthcare. And I think that the real issue with them is that they are, I don't even know the right word for it. They're basically setting up, again, this set of guidelines that are set to be, like the appropriate guideline for addiction treatment is set up through ASAM, which is the American Society of Addiction Medicine. So most facilities that have this ASAM designation, it's considered 3.1 and 3.5. Well, United Healthcare says that they base their guidelines on this ASAM criteria, but they don't, because we have it, we meet it, and then they say that we don't meet it. And they will, like, if you called in as an insured and called in and said, I want to check and see if I have benefits for my insured, my child, my wife, my husband, to go into treatment, they would call customer service for United Healthcare. And in our case, they would say, give the treatment facility name, and they would say we were red flagged. Well, if you called in and heard that our facility was red flagged, what would you think?
Interesting. So these are excuses. All these are excuses to save money and really, in a lot of ways, to outright defraud you. And not only are they defrauding you, they're hurting treatment. They're hurting the people you treat.
Exactly. And that's our number one problem is, like, we, on a daily basis, we should be giving 95% of our efforts to treating the people that come to us for treatment. And what it is we're fighting this bureaucratic red tape and fighting with the insurance companies, and it's taking away from what we should be providing to service for them. And it's intentional.
What really hurts about this is all of this business, for so many reasons, is hard enough. It's hard enough. It's a brutally tough business. You do it so well. You do it as well or better than anybody. And you know so much about it, and you've done it for so many years. And then you have these companies like United Healthcare who should be helping you with your mission, but instead they're making what you do exponentially harder, defrauding you and hurting the patients.
What United Healthcare, in my opinion, is doing is they are bullying the providers. They know that most facilities are the mom and pop run facilities. These aren't facilities that are big, huge corporations like hospitals are, that have the wherewithal to fight against them. So they just wear us out thin until we give up on going after them. And, so I want to fight for all of the facilities. There are genuinely legitimate people out here trying to change addiction treatment, and we're going to have to change. What we are at with addiction treatment now is like what cancer was 40, 50 years ago.
That's well said. Very well said. Very well said.
And unless we get progressive and we work with these insurance companies to change the types of treatment and the length of treatment, the key is the length of treatment, we are going to continue to get relapses, and we're going to continue to go backwards. And these epidemics will eventually bleed into every other form of healthcare. It's going to affect your internal organs. So I believe if it's not taken care of now, it will bankrupt our nation in the decades to come with healthcare. It's just, it has to be dealt with now, and they have to work with us.
Bernadette Cattaneo, CEO of the Lakes Treatment Center, one of the leading experts in the country on treatment and substance abuse. Bernadette, thank you so much. We'll have you back again.
You're absolutely welcome.
Thank you, Bernadette. guys, we're here once again. Our law enforcement agencies completely corrupt. Is the deep state out of control? You know it is. You got to hit that like button. Go to Behind the Curtain Radio. Hit the podcast button, behindthecurtainradio.com. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Let's get right to your questions. Dale in Wyoming. Dale writes, I saw you mention on Facebook that Hillary might be running again in 2020. She's really lost if she thinks she can get the Democratic nomination. What do you think? Dale asked. Well, we have a source, Dale, that tells us she is now quietly setting up her campaign in Brooklyn once again, which interestingly was where she set up that campaign in 2016. And it makes perfect sense to me. I really think that if you look at this, the vote is getting split up 15 different ways, and there might even be more entrants. Why shouldn't she run? I mean, she has nowhere to go but up. I can't imagine why she shouldn't. I've never seen the Clintons lie down and quit. Dale, beware, HRC. Roger in Florida. Roger writes, Reuters has been covering Beto O'Rourke for a long time. They sat on a story about his past and a hacker until after his race against Ted Cruz and then boasted about it. How can people still trust the media when they are obviously so biased? Well, Reuters, of course, is biased. It's part of the liberal media. They wanted Reuters and CNN and MSNBC and all the rest, Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times. Of course they wanted Beto to beat Ted Cruz. Honestly, he really didn't even come that close. He did reasonably well in Texas, but that's largely because Cruz didn't even begin a campaign until way after he should have. But you are exactly right, Roger. Reuters is nothing but biased junk. Inez in Chicago. Interesting here, Inez. Devin Nunes is suing Twitter for $250 million. Right you are, for censoring his tweets. It's great to see someone sticking up for conservative voices, but is this the best way to fight for our free speech rights on social media? Well, I'm glad he's doing it. He'll probably lose, sadly. The only real solution, Inez, to any of this is we need a conservative version of social media. We need a conservative Facebook, a conservative Twitter, a conservative YouTube, a conservative Instagram. We need all these things. We don't have them. Frankly, we need a conservative Silicon Valley, but we just don't have it. Lucas in Rhode Island. Fox News just hired DNC Chair Donna Brazile as a contributor. I'm all for having conversations and listening both sides, Lucas says, but hiring the woman who leaked debate questions to Hillary Clinton seems like a bad move. Donna Brazile is pretty corrupt, Lucas. Right you are. We actually sued her once in connection with the Seth Rich controversy. We'll talk about that another time. That's an issue from the past. But Donna Brazile, she's a very corrupt person. She did a lot of bad things in connection with the debates, leaking really just one of them. Fox News should never have done this. It shows you the leftward move of Fox News. Lachlan Murdoch and his brother wanting to turn Fox into CNN. Well, it's just maybe it's time to stop watching Fox News and start tuning in to entities like Behind the Curtain, where you will get real reporting, real information, and real conservative news. Remember, we're going to get into all these topics on the podcast. What you're hearing today is just a foretaste of the feast to come. Go to behindthecurtainradio.com, hit the podcast button, and even more importantly, tune in to Behind the Curtain. Kyle in New Jersey, our question of the day. The more we learn from Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, the more I'm convinced, Kyle writes, that the intelligence and federal law enforcement agencies are lost. The collusion between these agencies, the spying on U.S. citizens, and their insurance plans, quote unquote, reveal a deeply flawed system, and at the same time, they reveal the deep state. Kyle, you could not be more correct. I will tell you, there is nothing more dangerous to the United States public than the United States government. Let's say that again. The gravest danger we all face is the federal government in Washington. It is far more lethal and far more dangerous to you than Russia, China, Al-Qaeda, terrorism, you name it. Our armies in the field are strong. We're kind of like Rome. The legions were strong. We fell from within, right? That's exactly what's happening to us now with these agencies. The FBI, they have so many people on retainer. I think the FBI and other agencies are doing physical violence against U.S. citizens. I think they do it in the name of terrorism, but I think most of it has nothing to do with terrorism. I think these agencies are becoming the Gestapo. And I think that I stand behind that, and I think that analogy is right on point. We'll get into more of this in the podcast. Tune in to BehindTheCurtainRadio.com. Hit that podcast button. We'll see you next time on Behind the Curtain.